Foreign policy rarely gets much attention in national elections, with bread and butter issues usually deciding the vote at ballot boxes. But in the world's largest democracy, an increasingly well-heeled and well-travelled population is paying greater notice to their nation's position on the global stage. We take a look at how India, over the years and decades, has carved out its place in a world of shifting power and allegiance.
I think it makes sense to give Russia multiple options. Look, Russia is a power with an enormous tradition of statecraft. Such powers would never put themselves into a single relationship of a overwhelming nature. It would go against their grain.
India's foreign minister in February outlining his nation's approach to Moscow 2 years into its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. But in laying out what would go against the grain of Russian statecraft, he could just as easily have been discussing foreign policy at home.
Peace for progress.
Where, even before independence in 1947, strategic autonomy would be enshrined as the default blueprint for engagement with the outside world.
Peace has been the watchword of non-alignment.
A key figure in the global non-aligned movement, India's first Prime Minister would orchestrate its inaugural summit. He would draw on Cold War anxieties to underscore the need to steer clear of superpower entanglement.
This today is far the most dangerous situation that has arisen in the last 15 years or so since the last war ended.
But with clout, risk and thus allegiance shifting over the decades, India too has had to make adjustments. From author and architect of the non-aligned movement to a glaring absentee, in 10 years in office, current Prime Minister Narendra Modi has never attended a summit in person. This year's event in Kampala was no exception. Although Mr. Modi was out in force hosting the G20 summit just 4 months before, and earlier the same year feted in Washington by top leaders at the White House.
And to the everlasting bonds of friendship between India and the United States. Cheers. Cheers.
But for India, few things are everlasting. One that might be, though, would be avoiding the ties that bind in the name of what the foreign minister calls that single relationship of an overwhelming nature. On the grand chessboard of geopolitics, India, like any country, has every interest in driving a hard bargain. In its favour, sheer scale. The world's most populous state, number 5 in the size of its economy, number 2 in the size of its military, and number 1 arms importer. When it comes to vulnerabilities, the most obvious is geographical, wedged between nuclear-armed rivals Pakistan and China on its northern frontiers. Then there is that long dependence on another neighbour, Russia, as its key supplier of military hardware. A return to deadly conflict with the more powerful Beijing 2020 on its Himalayan border after decades of relative calm, a sharp reminder of unresolved territorial tensions and the need for a sustained supply of arms and ammunition. But concern over an emerging superpower can be reimagined as a source of strength if that concern is also shared by the superpower of today, the United States, and a fading superpower of yesteryear, Russia. Or each has the potential to checkmate the other, affording India, to quote Dr. Jaishankar, the options it needs to get the better deal.
If there are other factors out there in the world which can be harnessed by me to get better terms on an equilibrium, why should I forego that right?
More than 2 years into Russia's war in Ukraine, India has managed to dodge Washington's calls to condemn Moscow, abstaining on multiple occasions from voting on the issue at the United Nations, increasing substantially its purchase of Russian oil, in direct contravention of US-led sanctions, all the while inviting no public blowback, as was evident at the last meeting of US-Indian defense and foreign ministers.
That we have not only the strongest bilateral partnership we've ever had, but also a regional one and indeed a global one.
But how long can India hold out against a superpower whose dominance is so rooted in networks of bilateral, regional and global alliance? The need to unite and face down an immediate threat can drive cooperation for the moment. But the world can be lonely and treacherous for a country whose ardor for autonomy is only matched by an allergy to alliance.